Hello, I'm Paul-André Durocher, the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Gatineau, presenting you a second video clip on the pastoral letter that I published a few months ago called The Turn to Mission in the Archdiocese of Gatineau. In this video clip, I'd like to present to you the second and third sections of this letter. The second is entitled A Beautiful Story in 5 Movements, and the third is entitled Today's Context. A beautiful story in 5 movements. What are these 5 movements? They're quite simple. First movement, Jesus, filled with the Spirit at his baptism. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, and he has sent me." So that's the first step. Jesus is sent. Second step, Jesus sends his apostles. "Go," he says, "make disciples of all nations." Famous words from the end of Matthew's Gospel. With this word, Jesus entrusted his mission to his apostles and sends them. Third movement, well, it's the birth of the church in New France, in this new world, which we've come to know now as Canada. And we have people like Marie de l'Incarnation, François de Laval, Marguerite Duville, Jean Brébeuf, men and women who are inflamed with the gospel and come to this new world desiring to continue Jesus' mission here. The fourth movement is the colonization of the Outaouais area, the opening up of these lands at the beginning of the 19th century. Along with the lumberjacks and the farmers came men and women who really wanted to bring the gospel to this area and to help these men and women to live the gospel in their everyday lives. Men like Father Louis Reboul and Father John Brady, women like Mother Bruyère or Mother Marie-Zita de Jésus, active and contemplatives. All of these people wanted the gospel to be lived in our milieu. And the fifth movement of our history is the founding of our own diocese a bit more than 50 years ago, under Bishop Charbonneau, the first bishop, who dreamed of our church being a poor church with the poor, a church involved with the community, with the milieu in which we are called to live, a church that is sent out to others. And certainly when we read the history of the first years of our diocese, that's what we see. We see men and women ablaze with the spirit of the Second Vatican Council and trying to implement the gospel throughout all of their lives and in our society. Next section, today's context. Well, the fact is that the context is quite different than it was 50 years ago. A recent survey here in Quebec shows that though 3/4 of the population consider themselves or identify themselves as Catholic, only half actually believe in a personal God. And of this half, only 1/3 consider Jesus to be the incarnate Son of God, which means that only about 15% of Quebecers are truly Christian, believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Only 15%. This is a huge change in 50 years. Our society has become much more secular, much more pluralistic. There are so many options now available to people. People choose right and left what they want, their own truths. They seem to make it up as they go along. In that new context, there are 2 different reactions possible for us as a church. One is to kind of fold in on ourselves, a bit like a private organization that finds itself threatened by the world around and just seek our own self-preservation. The other reaction, and this is the one to which the Pope calls us, is to rediscover once again the mission, to kind of link up with this beautiful history which is ours, and to once again become an evangelizing church, a church which goes out to the world, a church which is convinced of a good news that it needs to bring to others. On our diocesan website, you'll find a little document that presents a few questions for each of the sections of my letter. One of the questions that is asked for this section is, what is the good news that we are called to bring to the world? Well, Jesus said he was sent to bring good news. What is that good news for you? What is it for me? When I think about what it means for me to be a believer, what it gives me, it it gives meaning to my life. It gives a sense of purpose, a sense of direction to all my days. My faith in Jesus teaches me that I'm not alone. It gives me strength in the hard moments, in the difficult moments of life. I know that I'm loved, and that gives me a trust and a confidence that is unshakable. This is what it means for me to believe, to be a believer, and that's why it is good news for me. I think it's a challenge for each one of us to be able to say, what is it that is a good news for them? We need to be able to articulate this for ourselves and for others if we're going to share it with them. And the second question is, well, Jesus says he was sent to the poor and the blind and the oppressed. Who are the poor and the blind and the oppressed of today's world to whom I'm sent, to whom we are sent? Well, I think it's everyone who is looking for a meaning in their lives. Everyone who's wondering why they're here on this earth. All those who live deep loneliness, deep questioning. And there are so many around us, these men and women who carry this deep questioning in their hearts. These are the people to whom we are sent. These are the people to whom we are called to announce a good news. Let's take up the beautiful history which is ours and write our own chapter.